Sports Now with Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, a member of the Intelligence and Homeland Security Committees. Thank you for being here, Senator.
Glad to be with you.
So incoming Senate Minority Leader, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, is saying that the fact that the FBI and the CIA disagree over any hacking, RNC and otherwise, shows the need for investigation and demanding congressional inquiry. Do you agree with that? And what would you be looking for?
Well, what's interesting is apparently some of the Democrats of the White House have leaked out some of the ongoing conversation that's already happening on this. There's an investigation that's already underway that's a normal part of the investigative process for members of Congress and for the intelligence committees. So that's already ongoing. And in fact, what the Washington Post leaked out was partially what's some of the conclusions. And it was interesting. What's been leaked out is only one aspect of it, not the rest of it. And so there's some selective leaking that's going on to try to skew some of the conversation one way or another.
Have you heard mention, Senator, of a false flag operation regarding the report pointing, fingers at Russia? I mean, how likely would you say is a false flag scenario?
There's no question the Russians have been involved in what's going on in our election, as they have in elections around the world. Russians have been very engaged in elections in Europe, obviously in Ukraine, everywhere they have in the former Soviet areas. They've been very engaged in trying to manipulate and just basically disturb elections constantly. They're always trying to get out there and to be able to rile people up. Now, the real question is not whether the Russians were trying to put out propaganda and doing cyber attacks against the United States. The real question is, what was the end? Were they trying to just stir things up and to be able to create impressions of fraud? How would we know that the Russians are engaged in this?
No, what the end result or the end game, their desired end game.
That is the exact issue, and that's the part that's been out there. And I heard the comments earlier that you just played from President-elect Trump. There's a big difference between saying the Russians are engaged in trying to undermine the credibility of the election and the Russians were actually trying to get Trump elected. Now, the fascinating thing to me is there's not consensus within the IC community on what the Russians were trying to do. There is consensus that the Russians were actually trying to hack into our systems and to try to create some sort of chaos in this. So they're not involved in election changing. All of these accusations that the Russians were in voting machines changing elections, there's no evidence of that. But there's a lot of evidence of cyber attacks and of propaganda in the United States.
What sort of conundrum are you in Congress facing? Here's the charge. Do a thorough investigation, present the hardcore, concrete evidence connecting the cyber dots to Russia, the Russian government, and somehow finding out the intent, if that's possible. Yet, at the same time, you shouldn't reveal exactly how the U.S. intelligence agencies gathered their information.
That is correct. The administration is the one who actually classifies and declassifies information. And that's what's interesting on this latest leak. A part of the ongoing investigation that's happening is when they just selectively leak some opinions and some views, then they know the rest of it can't be put out there to be able to counter that because they know that'll be exposing what is classified information. The real issue is here on the election side. If Democrats want to continue to say we lost the election because of the Russians, not because of their policies, not because of what's happened in the economy the last 8 years, not because of the way they stand on the issues or ran the campaign, that's fine if they want to continue to blame the Russians rather than their own policies. The real issue long term is we have to look at what Russia's done in Europe, what they've done in other areas, and identify when it comes here, why didn't we pay attention to it when it was there? We only paid attention to it when it was here. No one's trying to say the election would have gone the other way if only the Russians were out there. The issue is, are we going to continue to allow Russians to be able to engage and to meddle in as many different areas and to create instability as possible? No, we should not. Yes, we should investigate that, and it should absolutely be bipartisan. But no one's trying to say the election would have gone the other way if only the Russians weren't there.
So do you believe the CIA reports that Russia was involved? And again, you mentioned this earlier, that you do believe that, in fact, Russia has fingerprints on this. You're just saying, again, intent.
That's correct. So there's no question the Russians were involved. The issue is, what was their intent? And again, it goes back to, there was no Russian hacking into any of the voting machines, changing votes, any of that. What the Democrats are trying to say is the Russians somehow manipulated the American people so they voted for someone else.
Right.
And I just think that's a pretty big stretch.
How concerned are you, though? I mean, politics aside, we have a sacred democratic system here that we don't want any government hacking into or influencing in any way, shape, or form.
That is correct. Correct. This is why cyber issues is such a big deal. This is why it was a big deal that Hillary Clinton had a private server with private State Department materials and classified materials on it. This is why it's a big deal that we continue to engage in this when it happens overseas and not wait when it comes here. The cyber issues are important to our national security, to the security and reliability of our elections. It does need to be investigated, and it is already under investigation. So these claims to say we need to start some investigation assumes one hasn't already started. One has already started. That's what some of the comments that are coming out are being leaked out from the ongoing investigation.
More questions, no more time, unfortunately, though. Senator Lankford, I thank you for being here with us this evening.
Great, thank you.